Ever since Fionna and Cake has been confirmed to get a season 2, lots of the episodes of season 1's storyboards have been starting to be released to the public. And while every episode is not out yet, and we're probably to get more and more, I feel as though that these little storyboard sections that we got for the episode Jerry were something that I felt was really great, and I wanted to talk about it. This episode was personally one of my favorites of the entire series as a whole, and had so many great moments, and these storyboards actually allude to the idea of this being even greater than it already was, and bringing the series more full circle than ever. So I wanted to talk about it, gush about it, because guess what? Sure, there's a lot of baggage, but there's also some shipping, and we love that. Storyboards are a great way to tell what are in the writers' minds as they're making the season, and can foreshadow a lot of stuff that could come in the next season. So I want to take a look at this, get into some of the stuff that could be developed upon further, since we probably are going to follow Simon in the next season as well. So hopefully you enjoy this. If you do enjoy this, consider subbing, supporting the channel. You guys know what's up. From all the research I was able to do, all of these storyboards were done by Jackie Files, and I'm going to leave a link to them in the description below if you want to see these sets of storyboards, because not only is it just this, there's a lot of other ones out there. So I'd recommend looking into them and brain rotting yourself more if that's what you want. So I'm going to start with this section right here in the storyboard section 2, and we get this great scene that we all know very well of Simon and Fionna staring at this campfire. And we see a bunch of fun little stuff here. The fact it's blah, and then in the universe obviously being different, they change it to Malay. A lot of fun stuff here. Now the first section I wanted to talk about is this one in section 2, where we see the conversation between Simon and Fionna at the campfire. And honestly, it's quite a bit different, so I wanted to talk about it right here. Simon is a lot more direct about what actually is upsetting Fionna. Instead of just saying, you did the right thing, we get right into the topic at hand. Cake would have been killed. And then Fionna, of course, is having a breakdown right here. That's what I thought, but what if she could have taken the crown? And I blew her last chance because I didn't believe in her. A lot of baggage. A lot of baggage. Now, I love this scene right here. Fionna says that she didn't want to see Cake get hurt, and then that directly correlates back to Simon's dialogue about how he didn't want to see Marceline get hurt, so he took the crown. I think there's a really great correlation here that is kind of missed because they decided to cut this line. And there's other sequences like this later on, but we'll get to them when we get to them. There's a really great moment right here when Fionna asks if there was another way to save Marceline, and Simon does respond once again that he doesn't know, but he also adds that there's nothing else he could have done at the time. And I like this line a lot because it makes it feel as though that the through line of being able to choose your own path that's brought up in Casper and Nova and Cheers is sort of being alluded to here, in my opinion. It's the fact that once you go down one specific mindset, one train of thought for too long, you're kind of stuck in that train of thought. I like that mentality a lot, and I feel as though adding this into the actual narrative of the episode added a lot. So I like that this is brought up earlier. Skipping forward a bit, we have the scene where Fionna and Simon start to have their little flashback sequence where he's at the lecture hall, and Fionna directly asks, even tilting her head as sort of in joke, that this is what the watchers want to know. She's like, how'd you meet somebody like that? It's very kind of meta, and I liked it a lot. And then obviously we get some more info, and Simon is actually a lot more descriptive, and this I think is another great moment that should have definitely been in the episode that shows how devoted he is to Betty. Obviously we still see him drawing her in the dirt, but we get this great dialogue. She was so brave and witty and insanely smart. The fact Simon's able to start rattling off these compliments about her just completely out of the blue shows how devoted he is to her. So I thought that this moment should have definitely been a part of it as well, because it goes to show, like I said, how devoted he is to her. And I feel as though the more that we see them pining for each other and in love with each other, the more we would have felt the tragedy of the situation at hand. And don't get me wrong, we've already felt this tragedy for a long time, but I feel as though getting this more just would have been like them feeding us. We're finally getting this stuff like really in depth, and now they're just giving us not fan service, but like stuff that makes it feel as though this relationship is as real and as in depth as the writers had set up for years and years at this point. Simon's compliments continue to go further and further, and then Fionna obviously gets super invested because Fionna is a fiend for romance, which is obviously very great. And another meta-ish thing, Fiona obviously wants to know as much about Simon as we do because we're so invested in these characters. But the best part by far, is the fact that after all those compliments, all those amazing moments, we finally see for the first time in the entire series, Simon calls Betty his princess. And oh my god, how was this not in the actual series? We needed this. This was such a satisfying full circle moment for the series as a whole. So having this eventually be part of season 2 is something I am absolutely rooting for. My fingers are crossed. You guys have no idea. This is like one of those things. We need this to happen. So I'm hoping we get these moments sooner rather than later. So cutting to Simon's lecture, we start to see a lot of little things that seem to add up in my opinion, and could be something they build on in season 2. So I want to establish a lot of these moments that we've already seen and show the little differences between the two. Obviously, Simon and Betty having their fun little storyline right here. We see that Betty is so enamored by Simon's absolute imagination, his positivity, his seemingly never-ending wellspring of sort of hope for trying to find something that's new and interesting and out of the box. And Betty can relate to that. We have an absolutely amazing moment right here where instead of him getting a composition book thrown right in his face, we have a joke about waiting for the movie instead of reading the book, obviously, because the Enchiridion's a book. This moment afterwards, where we get a sort of focus on Betty and Babette's reactions to all the people making the jokes at Simon outside of Babette laughing earlier, the one about the magic beanstalk, is really great because it shows how devoted she is to his entire idea of what he does for his research. So I thought that was really cool. And she's actively hating on the people around her, saying, "Can you believe these fools?" Babette immediately comes around saying, "Come on, he is kind of, out there." And then Betty screams in joy. Yeah, that's what I like about him. That type of dialogue shows how passionate she is and how, just interesting she is as a character. Her entire thing doesn't revolve around Simon, but she finds something in him that a lot of people don't seem to relate to. Then we get the scene of her talking to Simon after the lecture, and we have a lot to talk about here because this scene has so much to just deep dive, so we're going to be here for a bit, just letting you guys know. So we get the scene of Simon and Betty talking about their experience in the library, meeting each other after going for the same book, and then Betty talks about how she wants Simon to sign her copy of his own work, which obviously happens in the original, but if we skip forward just a bit, we see that Betty actually liked it so much that she actually wrote a paper citing it, which was a really fun fan theory around the time, because obviously with Betty being in grad school, she knows the struggles of having a very niche interest, and having someone with that same niche interest literally lecturing at the exact university she goes to must have been like lightning in a bottle right there. So clearly she was trying to be confident. She was trying to actually talk to this guy that she's literally adored so much this entire time. And I think this is a really great moment because it shows just how much she idolizes him, not only with him literally being on a pedestal above her, with her having to look up to see him, but the fact that she literally has used his own words as a source of inspiration for her and her work. There's a clear difference in their status in the relationship and the power dynamic they have, and I think that this is really important to have in the scene. Now, obviously they had that power dynamic at the start with her already knowing of his work, but I think this adds another layer onto it. So Betty then has her entire speech talking about how she wanted to go to Australia in order to try and decipher these petroglyphs she wanted to find, but then she decides to obviously go with Simon. She sees it as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, so it makes a lot of sense that she's going to do this. But then this scene is really different from the original. So let me show you beat by beat. Simon is completely in disbelief from what Betty is saying. No one's ever talked to him like this before. He's used to people all around her, like the people who were making fun of his interests and making fun of the stuff that he spent his whole life working towards. So he is stunned by this sort of absolute positivity towards the stuff he's interested in. And he literally can't believe it to the extent where he asks her straight up, seriously? He cannot believe that this is actually happening. He can't believe he's finding someone not just interested in the work he's interested in, but devoted enough to just go with him after he asked her to go. He even said that sort of as a joke in a sense, but the fact Betty was so confident and straightforward is something he's not really expecting. Then Betty immediately comes through with another amazing line, "I really believe in your work." And obviously that's a great double layer of shipping pain and also just great awkwardness between the two, because we know that this is just too overly cute and wholesome and how terrible things are going to go, and that this is the meet cute, you know. Obviously they met in the library, but we didn't need to see that. This is it. This is the foundation of their relationship. So having this be so almost campy in a sense with a line like this is adorable, and I love it so much. Really wish that this was in, especially with the scene beforehand of him asking if she's actually interested. She then says the petroglyphs aren't going anywhere, which is obviously foreshadowing to her constantly putting her own interest to the side in favor of Simon's interest, and then is once again determined to go with him, saying she'll promise this, she'll be helpful. And then this alt text, which is obviously in the thumbnail of the video, says Petrigrof over petroglyphs, and I just thought that was so crazy that they actually just put that in the storyboard notes that I had to include it. I just thought it was so funny. And then obviously we get a bit more cheese, which is so great because we see a very awkward smile start to build up between the two and how they don't know how to communicate whatsoever. Some creepy smiles. Then Babette comes in literally, "Hey Betty, there's cheese." I love how ham-fisted the writers have pushed to make this as adorable and as cheesy as possible, to the extent that they literally had Betty's friend just come in with cheese, which is just too cute. I really like this joke as well. The reason I really like that scene of Simon being so in disbelief that anyone is interested in the things he's interested in, because of what follows right here after Fiona hears this little bit of the story. She says the same line, "Wow, you just met and she dropped everything to go with you?" And normally Cake would scream right here and cut the part of the story. But then there's a line right here that Simon says that I really like. "Yeah, she was so passionate about the work. It was like finding a kindred spirit." And I love this line because it shows that Simon not only is completely oblivious to the interest that she had in him from the start, but it shows that he didn't even see it as anything alluding to himself at all. We saw in that earlier scene that Simon did not even believe that anyone could be interested in him whatsoever. So him further alluding to it years later, many years later, that she was never interested in him at the start. It was always about the work and the passion they had towards this subject that they had the shared interest in, and not her being interested in him. There was a reason that she went to go with the Simon Petrigrof, not just anyone. So I'm really happy that this scene sort of cements how locked into that specific mindset Simon's been the entire time, because it shows just how oblivious he was to how much she cared about him, which obviously is one of the major themes of this entire series, where it shows that his obliviousness to the people around him and constantly being stuck in the state of depression evidently made himself feel that he is not as important as these other people, and belittling himself the entire time, until people like Fionna and Cake have made him realize that he does matter to other people. And not only that, he matters because he is himself. So I love that this scene was included so late in the series, and I wish that it was still in the episode, because it shows his oblivious nature really well in my opinion. Especially when later on the same episode, Fionna is going to reiterate that when Betty is at the bus stop and she just asks Simon, "Oh, so you went on the bus with her?" That sort of moment I felt would have been a great parallel to him being very enthusiastic about it, to him not questioning it, but not being sure how to respond to Fiona's question. Once again, I would like to thank Jackie Files for not only being someone who's worked on the show and came up with all these great storyboards for these amazing scenes, but also being confident enough to just upload them to the internet for all of us to see. It was really appreciative and really cool looking at some of these scenes that I thought were amazing and seeing the preliminary stages of what they would have been. So, thank you so much. And hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. I know it might have been kind of different from my usual content, but it's something that I wanted to talk about, so I thought I might as well talk about it. this show obviously is going to be super great in season 2, so I wanted to talk about all the things that were in season 1 and all the stuff that could actually be in season 2, since technically this isn't in season 1. So hopefully you enjoyed, and let me know what you thought was the most interesting. As I said earlier, all the links will be down below, so hopefully you check them out as well. That's going to be it from me. Hope you have a good one, and take care.